Hello, and welcome to the Pixel Venture Podcast. I'm your host, Corey, and with me I have another host named...
Jake.
Yeah. So, it's been a little while since the last episode, and I guess we can sort of talk about what we did in between, briefly. But we do have a sort of a general topic that we're going to be covering. So, what did you do between this and the last episode?
Why, gee, Corey, I did something really exciting.
Whoa!
PAX East happened definitely not a week and a half ago from when this is going up.
Yeah, we're not lazy. We totally recorded this like the day after. Like, whoa, wasn't last weekend a blast?
Technically, we're being consistent with our upload schedule.
Yeah. But, yeah, so you went 3 days of PAX. I only went one. So, do you just kind of want to go into your experience with Friday?
Friday was great, because I got to skip school, which would have been great if it wasn't snowing heavily in Boston. Yeah, the people I went with and I were all stuck outside in the snow, and that was not fun at all.
It's pretty funny.
Because, yeah, everything got wet because I was in a fleece, which doesn't go well with water. So everything just kind of got soaked for, like, the hour we stood out there.
I feel bad for giggling because I've been in that situation. It's awful.
Yeah. But we did eventually get in, which was great, because everybody's, radiating heat quickly dried everything off. And yeah, most of what I did was just walk around the convention hall and just look at all of, like, the stuff that there was, both kind of, like, gather my bearings in case I get lost, which I kind of did a couple times, but also just kind of, like, see what there was. Like, I saw a lot of really interesting stuff, like, walking around the booths. Not even just, like, the big name ones, but also just kind of, like, the small ones around, like, the outer edges of the hall.
Yeah, I was going to ask, like, did you focus more on AAA type developers, or did you do, like, indie develop type stuff?
I saw some of the, like, AAA developers, but I want to make sure to focus on the indie stuff, just because I've never really done that in previous years. Like, the closest thing I did to that in, like, previous years was it Speedrunners? Which, like, even that's
with
kind of, like...
tiny build booth.
Yeah. But now I, like, kind of focused more on, like, going to the other things I haven't heard so much about. I also saw some, like, pretty cool companies, like, especially along, like, the outer border of, the expo hall.
Yeah. Like, that's one thing that I do recommend, like, with PAX. I'm pretty sure I said this in the previous episode, but, like, try to go to every booth you can, because you'll meet so many cool people, like developers and just people that are interested in whatever they're showing.
I also saw this one really cool thing that I really wanted, but I couldn't buy because it was too expensive for me.
Was it the World of Warcraft statue?
That too, but there's another thing that's really...
Wait, there was another thing? Because that statue was like $300.
$350. But there was something that was a little bit less expensive, but I couldn't justify buying for myself. It's, did you hear of, was it Yogibo?
I know of Yogi Bear.
Yogibo, it's like, basically imagine a beanbag chair, except, like, depending on, like, it can... Imagine a beanbag chair that's also, like, a regular chair, as well as a couch and a bed.
Are you serious?
It's so weird. Because, like, it's the one that we were shown was kind of like, it was like a body pillow, but it was filled with these, like, foam beads, and, like, when you sat on it, it formed into a chair with, like, a back and everything that you could lean into, and, like, you wouldn't fall out of it. Like, it's, the weirdest thing. But, like, it's so comfortable.
That sounds so cool. Is it like a giant, like, cylinder type thing, or is it like...
Yeah, it's like a giant cylinder, and, like, when you sit in it, like, the beads compact and they form like a solid seat. But you can also like get up out of it, stretched out, and it literally just turns like one of the most comfortable beds you've ever laid in.
And you said you had no way to justify buying this.
Because it was like
You made a mistake.
$200 something.
Still, that's a mistake.
And
that sounds
I couldn't
glorious.
justify the price of that because I literally just got a new desk chair. But like
You
honestly,
just go home from PAX. You just have like the giant pillow.
but like I saw that with one of my friends, and like we both saw that it's like the best thing to have at like a college dorm, because it's literally like a chair and a bed and a couch all in one.
Seriously though, like send me like a link for that because I'm actually kind of interested.
It, like is arguably the most comfortable thing you'll like sit in. Back to video games. I also went to a couple of like the indie booths. Which ones did I play? Made like a list. Phantom Trigger, which is kind of like the closest thing I can like, because I've never really played a game like it before. It's kind of like almost like Transistor in a way in its art style, as well as like the way it plays from what I've seen of it.
So it's like an isometric strategy game.
Yeah, feel free to like look these up when I'm like saying them to maybe help me a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, I would type
much-
on my keyboard, but my keyboard is very loud.
Because as many video games as I play, I'm not the best at describing gameplay, because, yeah. Let's see, there was Graveyard Keeper, which was kind of like an RPG, but like, what I really liked about it was not only the gameplay style of it, which was, you know, RPG, and it was like kind of generic, I guess you could say, but like in a good way, and that it was kind of intuitive for me. But, like one of the NPCs that follows you around is like a talking skull, and like what I really enjoyed about it is they didn't take it seriously pretty much at all. Like it was just sarcastic, and so like,
that's like pretty much your humor.
not only is it my humor, but like it's nice to see that as opposed to like the super serious character that's like, you know, oh, you must fulfill this prophecy. It's like, no, it's like going on about how like magic is a conspiracy for wizards and stuff like that. Like it's a funny kind of comedy that like you wouldn't expect out of it.
Yeah, because of like hearing the name and everything, you'd think that'd be like all dark and brooding about death.
And like,
know?
but no, they make like fun of death. Like the skull's like kill this man before he, you know, discovers our secret. And then when you kill him, he's like, oh my god, why did you kill the man? But yeah.
I wish I played that.
Like there's literally nobody at either of those booths, so I'm just like, I'll walk up and play it. I'll see, like, you know, like hopefully I'm playing a good game, you know, early, and apparently it was a good game. A game you might have heard of is Pyre.
Yes, yeah, I heard of it.
I got to play that on my own because one of our friends was trying to talk me into playing it with him, and I'm like, no, I'm gonna do other stuff. But then I came back and I actually really enjoyed it.
The art style's fantastic.
The art style, I personally think like the way the characters were made is pretty good, like how it's all like balanced.
Yeah, I just like, I don't know, it's just something about that, the way that the environments look, that I was just like, oh my god, I want that to be my background.
Yeah,
that kind of stuff.
So yeah, those were kind of like the bigger things that I ended up playing.
Was that sort of your experience for Friday? Like, did you do any panels then?
I didn't. Oh yeah, I did do a panel. There was this huge panel. Well, I say huge, but you know, I went to this panel about video game data in 2015 and 16.
Where where are we now thing? Or...
Not so much that, but just kind of looking at let's see. One of the big things that they talked about was just kind of like the audience that video games are appealing to. And something that they've been seeing a lot of, for example, is like, stereotypically a lot of, you know, there's a lot of male gamers and not so many female gamers.
Yeah.
But when you look over every platform, it's actually pretty 50-50. And I think, like, to give, like, a rough estimate, I think it might be around, like, 40-60 when it comes to females and males. And, like, that number's been increasing ever since.
Yeah, and I feel like that, like, statistics like that are lost through, like, stereotypes, because you know the stereotype of the overweight, like, gamer living in their mother's basement,
Yeah.
refusing to get, like, a job, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like with statistics like this, that stereotype will be broken.
Yeah, and another interesting one is they've been finding that female gamers have been slowly transitioning from, like, before they were mostly playing mobile games, and I think they might still mostly be playing mobile games.
Mm-hmm.
But they're slowly transitioning into playing console games, and even from there, they're slowly transitioning into playing PC games. So, like, it was kind of interesting to see that, like, gradual climb in, like, where the average female gamer is, like, playing their games on.
Yeah, and honestly, like, I'm super happy about this. Not in, like, the creepy, like, I can't play with girls, like, that kind of thing. I'm not like that. It's like, I'm just happy that, like, male and female gamers can get enjoyment out of the same properties and the same, like, sort of, like, platforms,
Mm-hmm.
where it was sort of stereotyped as, like, oh, I'm a girl gamer or whatever, and, like, you know, we fit, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that was a really dumb way to phrase it, but, like, I'm just happy that, like, the stereotypes are being broken because of, like, you know, just the numbers are changing.
Yeah. And, like, I could definitely go, like, on and on about what they talked about. Like they talked about, where, like, most money comes from when it comes to video games. Like, what kinds of people pay more money for video games, why we see a lot of certain kinds of video games and not a lot of others, and, like, very, like, in-depth about it. Like, why you don't see any premium mobile games, which is, like, there are some obvious answers, but there's also some, like, not so obvious answers to it, but, like, I feel like we should kind of, like, try to move on before we ramble too much. You want to talk about
because
you want to talk about your Saturday, since that was the one day that you went.
Yeah, for me, my experience with that one day with Saturday was probably my best PAX experience, like, so far. I met a lot of cool people. I got to do a lot of cool things. As for specifics, I got to try out the Nintendo Switch for the first time, and just to, like, do, like, my little quick, like, review. It's like I heard a lot of people say that it's like the Wii U in the sense of, like, how it works, but, like, when you're feeling the actual controller and everything, it's a lot different, and that's something that I have to get used to, but I like the system a lot. As for specific games I played on it, it was Splatoon 2, Street Fighter 4, I believe, ARMS, and I got to try out 1-2 Switch, and those were a lot of fun. I went to a bunch of different booths. I bought way too much stuff at the Rooster Teeth booth. I got to play Shovel Knight Spectre of Torment, and I got to talk to the developers, and they were super cool. And that was a fun experience. As for other games, did you get to play, like, any VR games when you were at PAX?
Not this year. Part of why I didn't was just kind of like what I ended up doing that day, but another part of it was I'd used VR the previous year with Outlast 2 and they had a booth. Mm-hmm. So I kind of felt like I got, like, my fair share of VR, and I just kind of, like, get the most out of what I could from PAX. But I heard you played, like, a really good game.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's called I Expect You to Die, and if you can find footage of it on YouTube, you can watch it, like, you'll find enjoyment out of it, but it's so much more fun when you're actually playing the game. Because, like, with VR, I had a few experiences in the past, but that was, like, when the Oculus was first coming out, and there wasn't, like, a whole lot of peripherals past, like, oh, you have a screen on your head. Like, that was before sort of, like, actual controllers for, like, your hands like for moving your arms in game, became a thing. So I got on this line and I waited for a while and I tried really hard not to spoil the game because the whole game is you're a spy and you're trying to like complete these tasks that are sort of briefed to you before the mission, and they're like puzzles. And so like the first level you have to get this like secret spy car out of a cargo plane because like these bad guys are trying to transport it somewhere. And like you have to dodge lasers, you have to defuse a bomb, you have to blow up the door to get out. It was super fun, and the controls were fluid, and I felt like I heard one of my friends who did play the game, they had trouble with the controller initially because they kept on pressing, there's like the action button and then the home button were like really close to each other. So that took a second for him to get used to. But honestly, I just had a blast with it. And like, if you're able to try out VR, or if you do have any kind of VR headset, definitely try out this game. It's well worth your time. But besides that, I went to 2 panels, and we actually went to these panels together. The first one was the Coxing Crendor live panel.
Mm-hmm.
And that was fantastic because I haven't been to that panel before, and this was like my first year of going to the panel. I've been listening to their podcast for a while. They're actually, I like to think they're an inspiration for ours.
Yeah, except they're gonna be a lot better.
Oh, hell yeah. But like, I got to actually ask a question, and if you look up the Twitch VODs, you can hear me nervously ask them to do their best Barney impression.
I wouldn't spoil how he responds to it, because they can go to your social media to find the video for that.
I mean, I haven't posted.
What?
I didn't post it? Well, wait, no, I put it on my Instagram.
Yeah.
Okay, I take that back. Okay, go follow my Instagram. It's probably in the description, if I remember to put it there. So.
Yeah, it is. And you flamed me for not having any.
Oh yeah, that was fun. Anyway,
what was the next panel we went to?
Yeah, immediately after that panel, we went down to this panel about how to like make a more professional sounding podcast, which or like just how to get it off the ground initially, and they gave us a lot of good tips. And one thing that's actually kind of cool is one of the podcast members, he ran a this whole podcast where it was like a science fiction type adventure where he was like what was his character? He was like a something particle.
Boson particle.
Yeah, a sentient boson particle that was like incredibly sarcastic, and I just thought that he had said a lot of good things about like sort of if fans or like people who listen want to get involved with the production or helping the podcast, definitely let them. You know, like running social media or whatever. You want to keep that viewership.
Yeah.
And yeah, they went into a lot of more details, which again, like if you want to look this up, there's probably VODs of it on YouTube. Which honestly, I'm so happy that people put VODs of like all those panels on YouTube, and the fact that PAX even streamed all the panels.
Mm-hmm.
Because like I remember last year, I wasn't able to get into the co-optional podcast like panel, and I was really bummed out because I didn't like it's not really a podcast, it's a game show that I really wanted to see, and since there was no other way to view it, I just kind of like wandered around for that time. But like this year I was able to just watch podcasts that I weren't able to like attend, or just listen to the audio as I was walking around the convention hall.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing that I did was I never got to try out the game Dead by Daylight, and so I went to the PC area and I attempted to play it. I am awful at that game.
We're all awful at it, Corey. Don't worry.
I can see why people would be like gung ho to play the game, but like I just So I played this guy, and literally he had a knife and he had bear traps. He didn't have any other special ability or whatever. You just kind of stalk around and try to slash people and put them on hooks or whatever. And like he just felt so slow that like I just did not have any fun. I played the nurse character after that, and I had a lot more fun. And like, well, other thing is that I refuse to play Survivor because I can be the thing that scares people. I'm bad at being anything else. Because like horror games, like I can play them, but can I not scream when I play them? That's the question. Like, oh god, you should have seen me the year that they had Outlast 2 in VR.
I know, I went to that.
That was not good for me.
That was great for me.
You didn't see me, luckily, because that was that 6-hour gap where nobody knew where I was.
But I was there. I experienced the VR there.
Well, yeah, but you didn't experience me violently screaming and almost punching the person that put the headset on me in the face. This year, speaking of which, with like the hour gap, was there like a large period of time where just nobody knew where I was?
Yeah.
I feel bad. I like
me,
to wander.
I didn't really know where you were most of the day, partially because I was off doing my own stuff with other people.
Yeah.
Because even though Saturday was the day that most people were there, like in our friend group,
yeah.
I spent a lot of Saturday just kind of like hanging out with people I don't usually get to, like people that I met online, either through like World of Warcraft or forums and things like that, and I was just able to kind of, meet them in person.
And that's always a really cool experience when you like meet someone who you've been playing games with online for a while, because like I got to do that the previous years where like I used to play this game, and I don't know if anyone listening to this would know of it. It's called Toontown, and it was like Disney's online MMO type thing, and it was kind of dumb, but it was a lot of fun. And I remember there was this like group in it that was just huge, and they were considered like the most popular like group, and if you were part of it, it was like a status symbol. And I was waiting in line for like a panel, and I met the person who was the leader of the entire group, and that was the same person that I was talking to like way back when I asked them like if they could help me with a few missions, and we became friends, and we would get on occasionally like at least once a week to play together, and it was super cool.
And like what's really nice about it is like not only do you not get to like meet them very often, so like when you do, it's kind of like special in a way, but like to be honest, a lot of them I'm probably like better friends with like the people I met online than like most of the people that go to school.
I'm hurt.
Not like you guys, but like when you think about
you wounded me.
Like you know what I mean, at least, right?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I was just pulling your leg for a bit.
Yeah, I could tell.
Yeah. One thing that we should say before you move on to talk about Sunday is our experience with trying to get dinner.
Oh boy, you mean You mean the Shake Shack? Who do you want to have explain that story?
Can I explain the story, then you can tell like your side of it, like how you felt?
Sure.
So near the convention hall, there's like this sandwich place called Jimmy John's, and I've been there before, and it was super good. And like a few of my friends and I, we were planning to like go there for lunch, but we ended up not. So we were like, oh hey, let's do that for dinner. So we got the whole group that like went together, and we had like I want to say like 8 people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we got together, and at this point, Boston was like 17 degrees and windy.
Mm-hmm.
And we decided, hey, let's go walk to Jimmy John's. And it was okay for like the first few, like, I want to say like the first 10 minutes that we were out there. We were just walking, and we were like, goofing off, making jokes. Yeah, it was 9 o'clock, and we were walking through, and we were just making jokes or whatever.
Because I remember, because we were supposed to be picked up at 11.
Yeah. we were supposed to like, well, we were just walking around on the sidewalks and stuff. There were people walking, and they just kind of looked over at a majority of the group and just been like, "What the hell is wrong with them?" But see, Jake and I trailed back with you, Jake, because you were walking somewhat slow, because you were pretty cold. And everyone else just like running ahead, trying to get to the Jimmy John's. So, anyway, we get to the Jimmy John's, and one of my friends walks in, and the woman behind the counter says, "Oh, sorry, we're closed." So we were like, okay. After thinking about like what could we do, because I saw like a McDonald's across the bridge, but like because the wind was so bad, nobody wanted to walk. So one of our friends had the bright idea of there's this restaurant called the Shake Shack, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I can just put in the directions on my phone. Let's go." So we were walking, and we went like up and down like these weird metal stairs, and we went through like a tunnel, and like we get to the Shake Shack after like going down like 10 different alleyways, and it's closed. And he was just like, "Oh, I don't understand it. I don't get it. I thought like the one in New York that I went to, that was open till like 1 a.m. It's 10:30. I'm surprised this one in Boston isn't open." So two people in our group got very upset.
Yeah.
So, and to the point where one of them just like ran across the street and went up the stairs to like the other side of the bridge. And we were really worried that he just kind of ran off. But we got up the stairs and everything. We saw him up ahead, and then we kind of stayed together as a group when we got back to the convention hall. And a little bit, and this like we got back. I want to say it was like 10:50.
Yeah, something like that.
Like we were walking out there for a solid hour. So yeah, that was fun.
Yeah.
I apologize for rambling a lot so far, because we still gotta get to what you gotta say about your Sunday experience. So let go.
Yeah. So most of my Sunday experience was like pretty tame, because to be honest, after like the first 2 days of PAX, I was kind of like, oh god, I have to go a third day because I bought a ticket. And like I wasn't really like expecting much out of that day, but I was actually pretty happy with like how that day went, because most of what I did was I hung out at the Intel booth, where they were hosting the what do they call it? It's like the Epic.
It was the
Epic
PC build challenge.
Yeah, the PC build challenge, and the person who was hosting it was Trade Chat, who's a YouTuber and streamer that I follow. So it's kind of interesting to like watch that, and afterwards, they let people play on the PCs that were built, and you can just like play games on it on like the LAN that was at PAX.
Which somehow lagged for you.
Yeah. I don't really know like why it was. Like it got pretty bad at some points, but like it was still nice to play on them. Like I played some Overwatch on it. And that was pretty nice. And after that, I was just like watching streams of other people, because a lot of streamers went there to stream themselves playing on the computers, so I was able to like watch those live. And afterwards, I actually got to talk with Trade Chat, which was it's pretty neat, because out of like I've been going to PAX for like 4 years, and basically going to like panels and signings like that all 4 years. I would have to say that like when I met with Trade Chat, that was definitely like the longest meetup I'd like been to out of all of them. And so like we just kind of got to like you know, talk and do stuff, and it was really nice.
Yeah.
I gotta take a picture, and I got a signature, so that was all really cool.
Yeah, that's one thing that I actually really like is a lot of YouTubers and a lot of streamers are just like go when it comes to PAX. So actually being able to talk to them for an extended period of time is a really nice experience.
Yeah, and so like that was really cool. A lot of what I did after that was just kind of like I don't know, just kind of like relaxing, seeing what else there was. I don't think I bought anything that day, because we didn't go there very long. It was just like a couple of hours.
You met
but
the PvP guy.
yeah, before I
Remember?
left,
Yeah.
I like briefly ran into this one guy that I watch on YouTube who's a World of Warcraft PvP player who also does streams. His name's Swifty. Like I was about to leave and he was like rushing to go somewhere, so I just kind of like stopped him briefly and was like, "Hey, you're a really cool guy." Cause like I didn't want to like hold him up, so I just gave him like a fist bump, and things were pretty cool.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, I kind of already said my final thoughts with PAX. What it just being like, this is one of the best experiences with it that I've had. Since going there,
especially with the Shake Shack being the highlight.
Oh yeah, definitely. No, I'd say my highlight was literally just talking to developers. I talked to one of the developers of I Expect You to Die, and he was so nice. Like,
yeah, I was there when that happened.
Yeah, well, you were there for one of them. There was another one who was like talking to me, and I feel so bad that I don't remember their names. But like, I remember I was talking to them, and he was talking about sort of like the next game that he wants to sort of do, and like it's just in very, very, very like early stages of just like he wanted to take the concept of Mario Kart and apply it to like role playing games and call it Dungeons and Wagons.
Oh yeah.
I gave that man a high five because I am a lover of puns. But yeah, like this year was fantastic. I could ramble on and on about like PAX is for the people or like just reasons why people should attend PAX. But like, we've already talked up for over half an hour, so we might as well get to your final thoughts right now. You're okay with that?
I would say like overall, it was a pretty good PAX. I don't know if I could say it was my favorite or best PAX, just because like all of them are so different from one another. Like this year I played a lot of indie games and like met with people I don't usually get to meet with. Last year there was like Outlast 2 and things like that. Before then I got to meet a lot of creators, so like it's kind of hard to say which one's the best, but I would definitely say like this one was good and it was definitely worth paying the $150 it took to get there.
Yeah.
I don't know, some like other cool things was like you've heard of Emily's Away, right?
Yes.
They had a panel, I believe it was also in the indie booth, that they were advertising their sequel to the game. And it's like it's in the same style, but like what I found interesting is they're making it so that you're having multiple conversations with people that you have to hold up.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's going to get complicated.
The other person's name is Evelyn.
I love that.
I only know that because I took one of the buttons and a card.
It's like
because like I didn't stop to play because I was like on my way doing stuff, but I'm like, oh, I played the first game, like I'll see what this one's about. And like you get to like talk to the developers. They're like standing right there outside their game, and like, Another cool thing about developers is one of our friends. I think we can say his name because he'll probably be a guest on like a future podcast. Ethan.
Oh, teaser.
Ethan, one of our friends, who's starting to make his own like video games using these different softwares. He was talking to some of the developers on Saturday when he went, and he mentioned how like he went to talk to like one of the different developers, and he was starting to talk about his game. And did he tell you about this, Corey? He said the developer said something like, "Oh, you're that guy Ethan that I've heard about."
Yeah, it
like
was
the developers were like talking to each other about him.
There's this game called Smugglecraft, which Ethan is a Kickstarter backer on, and he found the booth and he went up to the guys and he was just like, "Oh, hi, I'm one of the backers for this project," and they were like, "Oh, you're Ethan, correct?" And he just freaked out
because like not only did they like know of him from the backing, but like I think they also like talked to each other about the indie game, because like I remember he mentioned that.
Yeah,
like he got so excited because like that just kind of shows that like not only are like the people that go there like amazing, but also just like the developers and the creators and the people that go there.
Everyone really cares about one another, like from developer like the developer and gamer like relationship when you're at PAX or any convention for that matter is so just like genuine. Like there's some developers that just kind of put on a show, like there's a lot of them that are just like really down to earth, and you can really respect that.
Yeah.
But
I think another fun fact that we should throw in there before we close this podcast is Ethan, this amazing guy who we all love and the developers love. He's the guy who wanted to go to Shake Shack at 10 at night.
that's what I was going to say.
Yep.
Yeah. Ethan, if you're probably listening to this, when we have you as a guest on the show, you need to like justify why you wanted to go to the Shake Shack at 10:25 at night.
We love you.
Yeah, we love you. Please come on the show. You'd be incredible. But
Yeah, overall, we can both agree that, like, PAX was amazing this year.
Yeah.
And we'll never forget the Shake Shack of 2017.
yeah, 17. But yeah, thank you so much for listening and tolerating us for another episode. If there's any questions, because I think the next episode we should actually do it with Ethan.
Yeah, we could do it with Ethan,
Yeah, so, since we're doing that, if you want to leave in the comments below, if you have any questions for Ethan, or us, or anyone really, because we can take the time to answer them, and that's one thing that we actually do want to do, is make it so that the audience has more of an interaction and a say of what we talk about,
Yeah.
Because, I mean, we can only make so many outlines, because we're both lazy.
But we can ramble for forever.
Oh, hell yeah. You kidding me? That's what half of this podcast is. It's me rambling and you going, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next episode.
See ya.
Hello, and welcome to the Pixel Venture Podcast. I'm Corey.
And I'm Jake.
This is Ethan.
This is Ethan.
That doesn't sound like Ethan.
Yeah, no, that's not Ethan.
My name's not Ethan.
Plot twist.
My name is Ryan.
Who are you?
Well, I'm glad you asked. I,
God, are you trying to make it sound like an infomercial?
only a little bit, but yes.
Okay.
This is not the right podcast to be advertising yourself on.
Haha, you're
Yeah.
wrong.
But anyways, so real quick, this obviously isn't Ethan, and Jake and we apologize for this. It's just that Ethan is a very, very busy guy. So next week we're totally going to have him, but for this week you'll just have to deal with whatever Ryan does.
It's a pleasure to be working with you guys.
Okay, Ryan, introduce yourself for those who don't already know you.
Okay, so in case you don't know me, I've been playing video games for a lot of years. I'm kind of similar to Corey in that I started with a lot of Nintendo games, and I kind of worked my way over to PC. Played games like MapleStory, League of Legends, then I moved to Overwatch. I'm also a big fan of good old anime. In case you're
Anime.
unfamiliar, it's just those cartoons from Japan.
Yeah, those Chinese cartoons. We can't trust them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and just a real quick, also disclaimer is, for a lot of the stuff that we're planning to talk about for this week's episode, Jake is not going to know anything because he doesn't watch anime. He hasn't played any of the games that Ryan wants to talk about. So it's like, yeah.
Woohoo! Avatar.
My cabbages! Anyway. Ryan just leaves. For those of you, also, you're just listening to this because we don't have a video version. Ryan's headset allows him to flip up the mic so he can mute himself. So, yeah. Anyways. So, since you're super interested in anime, there was a convention that you went to recently.
Yeah, so up in Boston every year. There's a convention called Anime Boston. Wow, big surprise. Um, so I went to that over the weekend, and I had a couple of interesting things I wanted to talk about. If you could let me do that.
No.
Are you just asking us if it's okay for you to go off of the outline we made? Are you serious?
I'm trying to sound polite, okay?
No, Ryan, we brought you onto this podcast so you can sit there in silence.
So I can do your podcast for you.
Yes.
Yeah, honestly, I don't know. Anyway, yeah, totally. Just talk about it because we already approved that.
Okay, so I'm not like particularly new to conventions. I've been to PAX East a couple of times. I can't even count it on one hand anymore, but I've been to a couple of other conventions too, so I'm not particularly new to the whole convention thing, but what I am new to is the fact that it's an anime convention. As you can imagine, there's quite a big difference between anime and gaming conventions, so I suppose I can start with some of those big differences.
Yeah.
So the main difference I found was because you don't have these like companies and groups that are trying to get you to like play games and really trying to like get you to spend your time there. The focus was a lot more on like the community, and it was a lot more on like vendors trying to sell things as opposed to like give experiences. So there were two main areas where people sold things. There was the vendor hall, which is basically, actually it's called the dealer's hall. My mistake. And that's basically where you had all your companies show up. They with some of the big companies. So if you're familiar with the industry, you might know some companies like Funimation, Sentai Filmworks, Crunchyroll, and so on. You had a lot of those companies there that were trying to sell all their like latest merchandise, and then mixed in with them were a bunch of other like smaller like stores that were just trying to sell things. They had like plushies, posters, figurines. Some of them had like DVDs and so on. And there was one other big place where they sold a lot of things, and they called that the Artist Gallery, where essentially it would be a lot of smaller artists that would come in and set up and try to sell their own artwork that they had drawn, which, as you can imagine, there's a pretty big change in tone from the dealer's hall because it's all like homemade drawings that people brought in by themselves. So you would see things you didn't like you wouldn't see in the dealer's hall. Like you would see like crossovers between shows. You would see like sometimes you would see like rough drawings, or sometimes you would see like more complete ones. It was definitely really different, and I think the key thing to mention there is the fact that because you could see like the artists in person, you kind of got like a better sense of like where the image came from, and it was actually really interesting to be able to see like, okay, so it's not just a store or a company trying to sell me something, but it's like a real living person who is also a fan of either like these shows or these games, depending on where you looked at, and you could kind of get an idea of like what maybe inspired them to make the like the images and all that.
Like piece.
Yeah, it's kind of akin to talking to like an indie game developer.
I have experience.
Ethan.
Not just that, just the fact, like, for the last two podcasts, I've literally told everyone, if you go to PAX, go to the indie area, because the developers are super cool. And while I still stand by that, I don't want to sound like a broken record. So it's good that you're saying this.
Yeah, there's a couple of other things. I don't want to just give off the impression that Anime Boston is all about just trying to buy things, but
although that is like a big part of it, right?
Yeah, that's a fairly large part of it. I'd say the biggest other part would be the panels.
Was it like companies or like fans or?
It was a mix of both. There were a lot of companies either trying to show off like their new shows. So if a company they had like movie premieres or like premieres of like new shows and new seasons. Um, and then you had like fan groups that were just trying to um, show off like how much they loved like a particular series or get a bunch of people together for one reason or another.
Mm.
So those, I wish I had a little more time, but I would have done those a lot more if I had the time to do that. And the last big thing that's there is they bring a lot of guests. So they have, I believe this year they had Puffy Amiyumi, which you might know from the Teen Titans theme song.
And their own like mini series, which was vastly inferior.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they had
the roadie. That was the most relatable character.
They had a couple of other guests there. They had some other music groups come by. In particular, I wanted to make note of some of the voice actors that went, because I got the opportunity to talk to one voice actor in particular. His name is Greg Ayers. He's done a number of shows. He's worked on some shows such as Psycho Pass. He worked on Ouran High School Host Club, and most notably for me is a game called Danganronpa. He did the
I knew you were going to segue into this like that. That was smooth. You're smooth. And Jake, I like how you've just been completely silent for the entire time. Jake, I almost said Jake again, but for the entire time Ryan was talking about the convention, you're just sitting there like, what is this?
Eren Yeager bites his thumb.
Alright, I'll give you...
Mom go down, I get frown. Okay. But, yeah, so you just mentioned Danganronpa, and you recently gifted the first game to me.
Yeah, so...
Do you mind describing the game for people who haven't played it? Because, I mean, like, I played it, I understand it, but a lot of people out there listening might not.
So, if you are familiar with games like Ace Attorney, then this might be a little bit recognizable for you, but...
That'd be me.
The idea of the game is that you are selected as the ultimate lucky student, and you get picked along with a bunch of other students to go to a high school for like legendary students, as they call it. And once you're in there, you find out that you have been trapped in this school along with the other students, and the only way to leave the school is to kill somebody and get away with it. So the whole premise of the whole point of the game is, as the murders happen and deaths kind of pile up, you have to figure out who done it in order to kind of save yourself and all the other people in your group. So the focus on the game mostly just revolves around figuring out these stories and getting to know these characters, which I'll admit are very interesting.
All of them are really well written. That's one thing that Ryan's completed the game. I have not. I just completed the second case. And one thing I can say is that all the characters are very well written.
And not to mention that, for me at least, I found that most of the characters were really identifiable. So you could take a look at like some of the promotional art, or you can just play the game and then look back afterwards. And most of the characters are really easy to like pick out in a crowd because they're really unique character designs.
The poop emoji.
The poop emoji.
Yeah. That's for anyone who played the game. We're talking about Hina and her like updo haircut type thing. But yeah. So I hadn't played any game in that series, but I played a ton of Ace Attorney, like way too much Ace Attorney. I believe the only game that I haven't played was the Ace Attorney that was released Japan only because of like copyright issues with having Sherlock Holmes in it. But like, anyways, so Ryan gifts me this game and says, I want you to try it, I think you'll like it. And I will admit that for me, it felt somewhat slow in the beginning, but it really does pick up the pace to the point where I'm just sitting here like, I want to complete each case.
Mm-hmm.
And
I think
figure out everything to the fullest extent I could.
And I think that's part of the credit to the way the game's written is that the whole game, for the most part, is notoriously unpredictable. So it's really hard to get an idea of exactly what happens until it actually happens, and you slowly figure it out. So for all the cases, you kind of are kept on the edge of your seat as to who it might have been, because new evidence comes up and people say new things that kind of push the discussion forward, which makes it really, really interesting for pretty much the whole game.
And like the killer, like I'd say besides the first case, like because I only played the first 2 cases, but I feel like Ryan, you could confirm this, is that like past case 1, it becomes really tricky to figure out who the killer is, and your opinion of who it is changes constantly.
I remember because I've been watching through some of the time that Corey has been playing through it, and I've been listening in, and he's been saying things like, "Oh, like I think this is going to happen," and there's a lot of moments where I know in my head that's not exactly what happens, but it's fun to see, like, knowing what happens, the fact that the game is so like unpredictable. Even someone who's like a veteran to the murder mystery type genre, having played like a lot of the Ace Attorney games, they're still kind of kept on the edge of their seat, and they're still, in a lot of ways, like I'm not sure what the best way to put it without setting.
A lot of ways, there's still like it doesn't feel like just automated. Like it feels like you're always involved, whether it's with the investigation, actually talking to the students, or the trial itself, sort of.
I'd like to give a specific shout out to, maybe not a shout out, but I'd like to give praise to the soundtrack, because the soundtrack for this game is absolutely phenomenal, and it sets the tone really well for any situation.
It's like a game like Danganronpa. I feel like I wouldn't think as highly of the game as I do right now if it didn't have a good soundtrack backing it, because like it's just like the case with Ace Attorney. Like if Ace Attorney had a garbage soundtrack, then people would be immediately turned off. It's like, oh, so you play as a lawyer, like what do you do? But because it has such like a high energy like soundtrack, and like just when you corner like someone who's lying, you feel excited to see where the case goes from there. And Danganronpa does a great job of doing this as well.
And there's so many like moments of like power. So something might suddenly happen. Somebody might slip up in saying something, or something might just come up when you make like a sudden discovery, and the music like empowers you so much that you really feel like you're really involved in this case, and I think it adds to the whole sense of atmosphere this game has.
Yeah, like I hope you know that every time that's happened, like in my mind, the cornered theme from the first Ace Attorney game plays like dun 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 like that, because it's just like I adore these kinds of games so much. And like another thing that I can comment on is that the controls, like you played this game with a keyboard and mouse. I'm playing it with a controller. I really like the controls.
And keep in mind that this game wasn't built for either of those control schemes. It was actually a game for the PSP, like way back, like in 2010.
Yeah.
So
they did good. Like honestly.
And I think they've done a really good job, actually, like porting it and doing like a translation, because I think they managed to get a lot of that same character that was in the original version with some of the new voice actors as well.
And I would say also, like, if you're playing this, give the English voice actors a shot, because they're very, very well done.
Yeah, especially if you know me in the way that I watch like my anime, you'll know that 9 times out of 10 I'll watch a show in the original like Japanese voices. That's for like a bundle of reasons, but even I, like, after seeing
English subtitles along with it.
And having seen both like casts for this game, I honestly preferred the English version.
I want to give special shoutouts for one character in particular. The entire character of Taka I love it. his voice actor is fantastic. Just his attitude in the game is fantastic.
Hmm.
Like, I feel like he's like one of my favorite characters.
Hmm.
But yeah. Anyway, if you had to sort of just like give this a score, like if you had to out of 10, or like just say like I guess just would you recommend this?
Oh, I definitely recommend it. If you're remotely interested in the murder mystery type genre of games, or really, if anything, I definitely recommend giving this a shot. And just to
I
remember,
can say the same.
just remember to stick with it because the game is a little bit slow in the beginning.
And set time aside to play it because you wouldn't want to stop in the middle of a case.
Definitely have at least like 4 or 5 hours set aside for each chapter because it definitely makes things a lot more interesting.
Yeah, like the first time you had me play it, I started at 11 a.m. We ended at 5.
Hmm.
Well, to be fair, I went back to like they have a little school store and they have a vending machine, and I wanted to see how many clamps I could get out of it. Because my goal is to essentially give a clamp to each of the students and see who actually wants that item.
You know, you could just look it up.
No, spoiler. And plus, I want this to be like a blind playthrough. Anyways, I think we should talk about a game that Jake knows. Otherwise, he's just silent for the entire podcast except for saying, "I'm Jake."
I feel so bad because we've been talking about this for almost 20 minutes now.
Well, Ryan gifted me an anime video game once, so we're trying to keep
Oh
this
god,
PG.
let's not mention that.
I'd just like to
Ever
point
again.
out that there was a booth at Anime Boston that was selling the exact game that Jake's talking about in physical, like the physical version.
No.
And let's just say I couldn't buy it.
Well, obviously. Anyway, so Overwatch is a game that we all play.
I'm gonna be
Yay.
completely honest. I haven't played a game of Overwatch in probably a month by now.
Well, thanks for jumping on. Well, like, as far as Overwatch goes, Jake, you mentioned that there was some new stuff involved in the lore.
Yeah, there was a new comic released the other day. I read it yesterday. I have no idea when it was released, though.
What was it sort of like entailing? And for those of you who do want to read the Jesus. For those of you who do want to read this comic, I'll link it in the description. So you can give sort of a brief summary of what it was.
Jake, by the way, what's the comic called?
It is the Blizzard Overwatch Uprising.
They had a
That one.
teaser released on Twitter saying like something about King's Row. And that's really all I know about it because I wasn't able to read it.
Basically what happens is it opens up on King's Row with like McCree like scouting out the city, and then it cuts back to it's like Switzerland or something where like the main base of Overwatch is, and you've got pre-mask Soldier 76 and pre-Edgelord Gabriel Reyes.
He had a mask, but the mask was
Along
angry.
with Ana Amari. You have the three of them being like, uh-oh, we're not supposed to be in King's Row because the world is mad at us
'Cause that
for
makes
saving
sense.
it. Yeah. And there's just like a lot of like political stuff that kind of goes on, and I feel like it really just kind of gives character to each individual character. Just because of like the attitude and the dialogue that they use for each one, like you can tell it's very unique and it's all like very intentional how they do it. Like you can feel how Reaper kind of feels like almost in the
Wow.
shadow of us, Jack Morrison, for like since he's technically the one in charge.
That's
Like I think he even specifically says like Anna's like, "Oh, you're not going to be the hero, are you, Gabriel?" And he's just like, "Well, I'm not the one with the statue, because, you know, there's that whole Soldier 76 statue." And you also get to see Genji with his Black Watch armor, which I honestly think that would make for like a really good skin for Genji. And I know he has like a couple of skins at this point, but I actually think it'd be.
There's one thing, I'm just kind of skimming through this real quick here, but I see one particular frame that has the Night Ops 76 like skin as an actual like canon part of the comic, which I find is kind of interesting as a way to like integrate the whole skins thing with the actual lore.
I could see them, because of this lore release, releasing a legendary Genji skin with that, because I looked at it and that looks super cool. I like it.
And there's also another skin for Tracer. I've heard talk about a skin for Torbjorn because he's wearing something kind of different. I've heard one for Mercy, but that one I kind of see a little bit less because it's basically her in a lab coat watching over Tracer and Genji have a little duel.
Well, I'm seeing like a bunch of characters.
Cool, like having like a nurse type skin. Imagine her like staff is just a giant syringe.
I'd want to see one of those for Ana.
What? Like a nurse? Oh, that'd be funny.
That'd be pretty funny.
Imagine if it was a giant syringe that shot miniature versions of her sniper rifle. God, it's Blizzard. If you're listening to this, which you totally are,
please hire us.
Please.
Yeah. But but also expand the custom game library so I can make that happen. Make it so that characters carry giant bullets that shoot small versions of their guns.
We know you can make it happen, Blizzard.
Yeah. And if you're like, oh, well, what do we do for Reinhardt? Just have him hold his flame strike and then shoot hammers.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Anyways, well, what would we lead from Overwatch to?
The new League of Legends champions.
Oh, yeah.
Of which I know nothing about.
Well, I do. Right.
Rakan and Zaya.
So, so there's new lore updates with that, but, hey, Ryan, let's bring up a ghost of your past. There's 2 new champions for League of Legends. There are a support and ADC, and, they look pretty neat, honestly. What are their names again?
Rakan and Zaya, if I'm pronouncing that right.
We probably aren't, but it's whatever. So, like, I really like the design of the support. Like, I think the targeted knock-up is really nice. The shield as well. Just the dash to his eyes or whatever. It's like, I think his ultimate, it's going to be pretty good for, it would be like something that you use to start a fight, to, like, get everyone to one position. Because what happens is, like, he's surrounded by this big, glowing, just, like, energy, and he can run into enemies, and when he runs into them, it deals damage, as well as, like, attracts them towards him for a little bit. And, yeah, I think that's pretty cool. As for the ADC, I think her abilities are pretty cool, and I see her ultimate, just, like, purely for what the ultimate can do, I can see her being like a tournament banned champ. I can see both of them purely because there's they have an ability which allows them to recall together.
Yeah, I see that sort of synergy as it's definitely something we haven't seen in the game up to this point. And I'd be interesting to see, because we already have so many champions. There's some like 130 at this point. So I'd be really interesting to see like how a duo like this fits out in the game, because it's at this point we're not at any shortage of champions. So seeing this kind of like you need to pick these 2 characters together, I kind of like to see that dynamic as something just different that we haven't seen before.
I do want to point out that the ADC's ultimate makes her untargetable for a little bit, which means that she could jump over like Ash's arrow, like ultimate, which she fires like a giant arrow that can stun enemies. She can jump over that. And she also has an ability which calls back whatever like feathers or blades she throws out. So I essentially see her ult as being a giant version of Talon's rake.
Interestingly enough, I kind of saw some of the traits of Talia in Zaya's kit, specifically with the whole like feather mechanic. I felt like there were some elements there that were fairly similar.
Like in the sense of just of using like the earth to like shoot a bunch of those like rock spires.
Yeah, kind of. And the way that they, I believe it's her Q, that kind of work. And I think it might have been her W as well.
Her W is really cool.
I don't know. A lot of her kits seem to kind of strike me as that.
Well, I actually like a lot of her abilities. I think the E is very interesting. Correct me if I'm wrong. I believe it's you throw this like it looks like a shield onto an ally, and when they auto attack, you auto attack as well. Whatever range.
I believe that was the W.
Okay.
The E
is the callback.
E was the root. I'm a little bit worried, frankly, that these characters together are going to have too much crowd control. It seems a little bit much. They have like a knock-up, and they have obviously the root, and then they have the taunt, I believe.
Yeah. I feel like they're so complementary, like the way that their abilities work together, that if you allow them to both be picked and both be on the same team, you're not going to have any fun. I can see in tournaments, or just in ranked queue in general, I could see one of them being banned and then making it so that the other like champ can't be picked because...
Yeah, and
I mean, they're probably going to find synergy between other champs, but not as good as this.
Yeah, obviously they have like champion-specific interactions with like the recall, and there was one other ability.
Like certain things with the abilities.
Yeah, I think because of that, they were inevitably going to be better together. Because
it's in the lore.
My only concern is that like they might not have enough damage, but I think like even if they did limit the amount of damage that these characters had, the fact that they have so much CC means that you can kind of take that away from the rest of your team, and you can put damage in other places where you would normally put like CC.
Like CC type stuff.
Yeah.
So you'd have like more assassins mid lane. Is that what you're saying? Or?
Yeah, and you could kind of complement the rest of your team with that. I think that sort of interaction would be cool. But then again, I haven't seen a whole lot of gameplay like in games, so I wouldn't be able to say for sure how much damage they do.
They're on the PTR right now.
PTR.
So we can check it out after this. Speaking of which, I believe, Jake, it's now time to wrap up the Pixel Venture podcast with Corey and Ryan starring Jake.
Woohoo!
I honestly feel really bad that you didn't have a whole lot to say this episode.
ADC stands for another dumb character.
Well, I mean, I'm glad that you wanted me to do your show for you, but, you know. You could at least give it a little more effort, Jake.
So on Ethan's episode is my day off. Got it.
Yeah, because I care about Halo just as much as he does. Just kidding, he cares about it a lot more.
Yeah. Anyways, Ryan, thank you so much for being part of this podcast. And is there anywhere that people could find you?
No.
This is where you plug your Twitter.
Gamer tag?
It's my anime waifu for League.
If you really were determined, you could follow me at TwinRovaMGM on Twitter, if you were really inclined, but...
In the description below. Yeah. Well, anyway, thank you so much for listening, and next week we promise that we won't have an Ethan impersonator.
Whoa,
Which
whoa, whoa.
honestly, Ryan, it was pretty convincing up until you said something.
I never said I was an impersonator.
Oh, we're gonna have a really good Ethan impersonator. His name's gonna be Ethan.
Yeah.
But it's not going to be the Ethan that does games. It's the Ethan that always it's going to be like a different Ethan, anti-Ethan. But yeah, thank you so much for listening, and we will see you next week.
See ya.